Say sorry to my sister or leave my house, my husband demanded in front of everyone at dinner. I stood up, walked straight over to his sister, and apologized with one sentence. Seconds later, the entire table went silent, and before the night was over, 3 marriages were falling apart, including my own. The wine glasses jumped before I did. That's the part I remember cleanest. Not the sound of my husband's palm hitting the table. Not the 11 years. 6 glasses of Pinot Noir lurching at the same time, like the whole table flinched on my behalf. Apologize to my sister, or get out of my house. 11 years of marriage. That was the sentence he picked. The room went quiet in that expensive way. His mother's china, the linen runner I'd ironed at 11 o'clock the night before, a turkey I'd started brining at 6:40 Wednesday morning because Daniel liked it the way his grandmother made it. Across from me, Rebecca dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin. 5 minutes earlier, she had been smiling while she told the entire table that I was the reason her marriage was falling apart. Some women just can't stand watching other people be happy, she'd said, reaching for the gravy. Then sweeter, it's okay. Not everybody gets a real life. Emily has her little spreadsheets. Daniel laughed. He actually laughed. Her husband, Nathan, stared at his plate. My in-laws stared at theirs. My little sister Claire went completely still beside me. Rebecca sniffed. It's fine, Danny. She's always been jealous of me. Daniel pointed at me the way you point at a dog that's knocked over a lamp. Emily, now. I looked at the man I had been married to for 11 years. At the gray at his temples, I used to think was distinguished. At the wedding band he still wore, which cost more than my first car. Apologize, I said. Or leave. Yes. He didn't even pause. And that was the second I stopped being afraid of him. Because here is what nobody at that table knew. Not his mother. Not his father. Not Nathan. Not even my sister. I had a folder. I'd had it for 14 months. And I had filed for divorce 2 weeks before that turkey ever went in the oven. Let me back up. My name is Emily. I'm 41. For 9 years, I've worked as a senior revenue integrity auditor for a hospital system outside Chicago, which is a long way of saying I get paid to find the place where 2 numbers should match and don't. That's the whole job. Somebody documents a procedure one way and bills it another way. A charge posts twice. A modifier gets dropped. Nobody's lying usually. It's just that money moves through a system in 1,000 small steps. And if you follow the steps in order, the system will eventually tell you the truth whether it meant to or not. I am extremely good at it. I have a certification and a corner cubicle and a manager who once described me in a performance review as relentlessly literal, which she meant as a compliment and I took as one. Rebecca called it my little spreadsheets. She'd been calling it that since our engagement party. Daniel was regional sales director for a surgical supply distributor. Illinois, Indiana, Eastern Iowa. 11 years married, no kids, a 4-bedroom in Libertyville we'd stretched to buy in 2019. He was funny at parties. He remembered people's kids' names. He was the guy who carried in the folding chairs without being asked. I want to be fair to him, even now. For most of 11 years, he was good to me. That's what made the rest of it work. His sister Rebecca was 45 and sold contract furnishings, the beds, case goods, and lobby seating that go into hotel renovations. Her territory ran up through Wisconsin. She had a corporate discount code memorized for 6 different chains, and she used it the way other people use a family crest. Rebecca had one talent above all others. She could say something unforgivable in a voice so pleasant that if you objected, you became the problem. She'd been doing it to me since 2014. Daniel had never once heard it, not because he wasn't there, because he'd decided a long time ago that his sister was a person things happened to. Her husband Nathan was a structural engineer, 50-ish, gentle, precise. He reconciled their household statements on the first Sunday of every month, sitting at their kitchen island with a mechanical pencil. Rebecca told that story at parties like it was a charming defect. I always thought it was the kindest thing about him, a man who wanted to know exactly what his life cost. And then there was Claire, my sister, 34, dental hygienist, married to Marcus Doyle, a construction project manager who ran hotel renovation jobs across 3 states. They had a daughter, Nora, 6, who called me Aunt M and once mailed me a drawing of a spreadsheet. That was the table. That was my family. 14 months before that Thanksgiving, on a Sunday afternoon in September, I sat down with the joint credit card statement and a cup of coffee because I had always been the one who did the statements. And I found 2 charges I didn't recognize. Harbor Light Inn and Stees. Oak Creek We 148 Harbor Light Inn and Stees. Oak Creek We 148 Searon, September 5th, September 12th, both Thursdays. I didn't panic. That's important to say because people always assume the first moment is the big one. It wasn't. My first thought was genuinely, honestly, that's a duplicate post because that's what my brain does. I flagged it the way I'd flag a line item at work. Highlighted yellow, note in the margin, ask the vendor. That night I asked the vendor, hey, what's Harbor Light Inn? Daniel was scraping a pan. He didn't turn around. Oak Creek? That's the Kellerman thing. Client dinner ran long. I stayed over. Twice? 2 visits. Still scraping. They're a pain. Okay, I said. And here's the thing. I meant it. I said okay, and I meant okay. He'd never given me a reason. In 11 years, I had never once opened his phone, but I'm relentlessly literal. So on Tuesday, at work, on my lunch break, I pulled up his company's territory map. He'd sent it to me 2 years earlier when he got the promotion. All proud, the 4-state region shaded in blue. Wisconsin wasn't blue. Wisconsin had never been blue. There was no Kellerman. There was no account north of the state line because a different regional director had that territory, and Daniel used to complain about him by name. I sat in my car in the parking structure structure with my sandwich in my lap and did not eat it. Then I went back inside and did the thing I do. I pulled 14 months of statements. There were 11 of them. 11 separate stays at the Harbor Light Inn and Suites in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, spread across 14 months. Always a Thursday. Always the same rate, $148, which meant a negotiated corporate code, which meant somebody had a relationship with that property. Total, $2,046.80 on our card. Paid out of the account my paycheck went into. My hands didn't shake. I want to be honest about that too. My hands were fine. My jaw locked up so hard that night that I woke up at 2:47 with a headache behind my left eye and lay there doing the math again in the dark because I hoped I'd done it wrong. I hadn't done it wrong. I never do it wrong. That's the tragedy of being me. I could have opened his phone. I want to be clear that I didn't. And not because I'm noble, because I didn't have to. We had a shared iPad. We'd bought it in 2020 for recipes and a streaming subscription, and it lived in a drawer in the kitchen island under a stack of takeout menus. Daniel had signed into it once, years ago, to look up a flight. He forwarded things to himself constantly. Receipts, confirmations, screenshots. It was how he organized his life. A man who used his own inbox as a filing cabinet. In 11 years, he never once remembered that the iPad synced to the same account. I took it out of the drawer on a Thursday in late September, sat on the closed lid of the toilet in the guest bathroom with the fan running, and opened it. I expected a woman's name. That is the whole reason I'm telling you this the long way, because I need you to understand what I was braced for. I had already decided, sitting on that toilet lid, that I was going to be dignified about it. I had already written the sentence I'd say to him. I'd already picked the lawyer's website I'd look at. The first thread was from Rebecca. Thurs is confirmed. Same as always. Don't book it under S. And below it, from Daniel. I know. It's under mine. You owe me $148. And below that, from Rebecca. 11 minutes later. You're the best brother alive. I read it 4 times. I remember the fan noise. I remember thinking very clearly, this is worse, before I could have explained to anyone why. I scrolled. There were more. Not many. Rebecca was careful in a way Daniel wasn't, but enough. Don't book it under S meant don't book it under Sloan, because Nathan reconciled their statements on the first Sunday of every month with a mechanical pencil. My husband wasn't cheating on me. My husband was renting a room for his sister to cheat on Nathan on our credit card 11 times in 14 months. And when I asked him about it directly at our own kitchen sink, he looked at a frying pan and invented a client. I sat there until the water in my glass went warm. Then I got up, put the iPad back under the takeout menus exactly the way I'd found it, and went downstairs and watched a cooking show with my husband. I have never been prouder of anything in my life, and I've never felt more like a stranger inside my own body. That night I started the folder. I'm going to tell you what I did next, because this is the part people always ask about. I did not confront him. I did not scream. I did not call Nathan. I built a file, screenshots, time-stamped, with the device clock visible. Statement PDFs, downloaded from source rather than photographed, because a photograph of a screen is worth nothing, and a native export is worth something. I kept a plain text log, date, time, what I'd found, where it came from. Same log format I use at work. Habit is a hell of a thing. I copied everything twice. One copy went to an external drive. The other went to a safe deposit box at a branch across town, opened in my name only, with a fee of $65 a year that I paid out of a checking account Daniel had never looked at, because it was the one my direct deposit had gone into since before we were married. I collected for 6 months. 6 months of passing potatoes at Sunday dinner. 6 months of telling Rebecca I loved her earrings. 6 months of my husband kissing the top of my head on his way out the door on a Thursday. In October, I called the Harbor Light Inn. I want to be careful here because people get excited about this part, and it's actually very boring. I didn't pretend to be anyone. I said my name. I said I was a card holder on the account that had been charged 11 times, and I said I needed itemized folios for tax substantiation, which was true. I did. The woman at the front desk put me on hold for 9 minutes and then emailed me 11 PDFs. Registered guest on all 11. R. Sloan. Occupancy. 2. And on 4 of them, because the Harbor Light validated overnight parking. A line item with a plate number. I looked at that plate number for a long time. It was an Illinois plate. It didn't mean anything to me. I filed it in the folder under unresolved, and I kept going. In March, the folder stopped being about an affair. Our mortgage servicer sent the annual escrow analysis, ordinary mail, the kind you glance at, except my escrow payment had gone up $61 a month and the explanation didn't reconcile with the tax bill. So I pulled my credit report. Free, once a year, 20 minutes. There was a home equity line of credit on our house, opened 14 months earlier, that same March. Line amount, $75,000. Current balance, $41,500. I had never seen it. I had never applied for it. I had never signed anything. And in Illinois, on a home held in both our names, you cannot open a line like that without both spouses. I sat on the floor of my closet with my laptop on my knees, and that's when my hands went. Not at the hotel charges, not at the iPad, over a piece of paper with my own name on it in handwriting that was almost but not quite mine. I ordered the closing package from the lender. It took 11 days and a $30 fee. When it came, I laid all 8 pages on the dining room table, the same one, and looked at the signature on the mortgage writer. The E was wrong. My E has a flat top. That one curled. The rest of it was a decent forgery. Somebody who'd watched me sign things for a decade. There was a notary stamp, a name, a commission number, an expiration date. I had never met him. And then I did what I do, which is trace the money. 19 transfers out of the HELOC over 14 months, ranging from $800 to $6,200. Not to a hotel, not to a girlfriend, to Rebecca. $34,200 of it. She told him her commission draw got clawed back. She told him it was temporary. She told him, and this is in a message I have, and I have read it more times than is healthy, I just need to get through this year without Nathan finding out how bad it is. My husband put a lien on my house to fund his sister's double life, and then he sat across from me at dinner and complained about the cost of my dental crown. I gave him one chance. Exactly one. I've thought about that a lot. It was a Tuesday in April. Claire was over, sitting at the island with a glass of wine, and Daniel came in from the garage, and I said it plainly. Is there anything you need to tell me? He stopped, and for about a second and a half, I watched a man decide. Then he laughed, not cruelly, warmly. That was the worst part. Come on, you're being paranoid. He said it in front of my sister. Claire looked at the floor. Something happened in me right then that I don't have a good word for. It wasn't rage. It was more like a door closing very softly in a house you've already left. I never asked again. I did try one more time, in a different direction. 2 weeks later, I suggested counseling, said we felt distant, said I'd found somebody who took our insurance. He said he'd think about it. 3 days later, he said he was slammed through Q2 and could we revisit in the fall. We did not revisit in the fall. The professionals came in that summer, and they did not all believe me. Vanessa Okonjo was the first. Family law, 19 years in Lake County. A woman with reading glasses pushed up into her hair, and an office that smelled like burnt coffee. I brought her a 3-ring binder. She flipped it open, read for 11 minutes without speaking, and then looked up. You did the statements yourself? Native exports, not screenshots. Do you have a log? I handed her the log. She took her glasses out of her hair and put them on. Emily, I have clients pay forensic accountants $12,000 for less than this. Then she told me the part I didn't want to hear, that in a no-fault state, the affair was worth nothing. Legally, nothing. Rebecca's Thursdays were a moral fact and not a financial one. But this, she said, tapping the HELOC page, this is the case. This is dissipation of marital assets. And if that's your signature and you didn't put it there, it's also a felony. She filed a notice of intent to claim dissipation. That's the actual term. And there's a look-back window, and if you miss it, you lose it. She was very clear about the calendar. She said the word deadline 4 times. Priya Raghunathan was second, and Priya did not like me at all. Senior fraud investigator at the credit union that held the line. 12 years in financial crimes before that. She had a flat voice and a habit of repeating my last sentence back to me as a question. You didn't notice a $41,000 line for 14 months? I didn't. You didn't. Pause. Ms. Whitaker, I'll be direct with you. The most common version of this call is a spouse who signed, spent it, and wants out of it now that the marriage is over. I understand. Do you? She had every reason. She sees it constantly. I gave her signature exemplars, 22 of them, spanning 9 years, from documents she selected, not documents I offered. That mattered. She told me later it was the thing that flipped her, that I let her pick. The exemplars went to Gerald Pike, a forensic document examiner, 31 years, board certified through the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. His report ran 9 pages. I understood about half of it. Line quality, pen lifts, the way a genuine signature varies within a range, and a simulated one doesn't vary enough. His conclusion, in the flat language those reports use, was that there was strong support for the proposition that the questioned signature was not written by the same person who wrote the known specimens. That report became Exhibit D. I still think about that, 14 months of my life, and it ended up as a letter of the alphabet. The notary went to the Illinois Secretary of State's Index Department on a complaint form I filled out on a Sunday. His commission log had no entry for that date at all. And there was one more. Dana Whitham, LCSW, 14 years, who I found for myself in July because I had started waking at 2:47 every single night, the same minute, like an alarm I couldn't uninstall. I told her the whole thing in the first session. She listened. And then she said the sentence that actually undid me, which was not about Daniel at all. Who's protecting your sister? I didn't have an answer. Because by then, Claire had started asking questions. Not about me, about Marcus. It came out sideways, the way these things do. A Saturday in September, the two of us in her kitchen, Nora watching something in the next room, and Claire said, lightly, too lightly, "Do you think it's weird that Marcus has been doing Thursday site visits for like a year?" I put down my coffee. "He's a PM, I said. "That's the job. He drives up to Wisconsin and comes back Friday." She was scrubbing a pan that was already clean. "The Oak Creek property. It's been the Oak Creek property for a year, Em. I want to tell you that I put it together in a thunderclap." I didn't. I put it together in about 4 hours, in my car, in a Jewel Osco parking lot, one piece at a time, the way you always actually put things together. Marcus ran hotel renovations. Rebecca sold hotel furnishings. They had been on the same jobs. I had heard them talk about it at a 4th of July barbecue 2 years earlier and thought, how nice, they have something in common. The plate number. I opened Claire's 4th of July album on my phone. She posts everything. Always has. And scrolled until I found a photo of the driveway. Marcus's silver Acura MDX, backed in, plate legible. Nora sitting on the hood in a swimsuit with a popsicle. I already knew before I compared them. I compared them anyway. That's who I am. Then I sat in that parking lot with the engine off until the windows fogged and I could not see out of them, which was fine, because I did not want to see out of them. 14 months. 14 months of me guarding this thing like it was a grenade in my own house, and the whole time it was in my sister's house too. I called Rebecca 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, on a Wednesday at 4:31 in the afternoon. I want to say I called to be merciful. I think I called to be sure. She answered in her nice voice, the one she saves for waiters. I said it as plainly as I know how. I said, end it. Tell Nathan yourself. Do it before the holiday, and I will never say a word to anyone. There was a silence on that line I will hear for the rest of my life. Not shock. She was calculating. I could hear her doing it. Then she laughed a little. Emily, honey, I don't know what you think you— Oak Creek, I said. 11 times. Under S is a bad idea, so it's under Daniels. Another silence. Longer. And then she stopped pretending, and what came out was not panic. It was strategy. You need to stop putting ideas in Claire's head. I haven't said one word to Claire. Then keep it that way. Her voice was still pleasant. It was still somehow pleasant. If Claire starts digging, I'll make sure she finds out what Daniel's been doing too. There it was. She thought I only suspected. She thought the worst thing in my file was a hotel receipt. She thought she was holding a hostage. My marriage, my dignity, the version of my life where nobody at Sunday dinner knew. She thought I would trade my sister's marriage to save my own. She picked the wrong woman. I filed for divorce 8 days later. The last 2 weeks before that Thanksgiving were the worst 2 weeks of my life, and almost none of it was about feelings. It was logistics. Everything was logistics, and everything was on a clock. Monday, Vanessa told me the dissipation notice had to be filed within the statutory window, and we were inside of 30 days on the earliest transfers. Miss it, lose it. Tuesday, Priya's fraud unit needed my affidavit of forgery, notarized, before they could move the file to their referral queue. But the second that affidavit posted, the account got frozen and flagged, and Daniel would get a letter, which meant the clock on him finding out started the moment I signed. Wednesday, Daniel mentioned, chewing, that he was looking at a refi in December. Rates are finally decent. He wanted to refinance, which would have rolled the HELOC into a new first mortgage. My forged signature laundered into a clean instrument, the evidence retired, the debt made mine forever with a real signature on top. Thursday, Vanessa said the words, "He cannot be served before you're ready to leave that house," and I understood that I was going to have to live beside him for 9 more days pretending. I stopped eating on the Friday, not on purpose. I'd put food in my mouth and it would sit there like a stone and I'd take it out again. I lost 6 pounds in 11 days and Rebecca complimented me on it. And then on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, at 9:40 at night, my sister texted me. I found something on his phone. I'm done pretending. I'm saying something at dinner. I read it standing in my own kitchen with the dishwasher running. Here was the choice, and I had about 90 seconds to make it. If I told Claire everything right then, on the phone at 9:40 on a Sunday, she'd confront Marcus that night. Marcus would call Rebecca. Rebecca would call Daniel. Daniel would be at a bank Monday morning trying to move a refinance forward or drain what was left, and Vanessa's filing wasn't in yet, and Priya's file hadn't cleared the queue, and every single piece of the last 14 months would come apart in my hands. If I said nothing, my little sister would walk into my dining room on Thursday in front of my in-laws and detonate her own life without knowing what was in the bomb. Both of those were the wrong answer. That's the thing nobody tells you. Sometimes there is no right answer. There's only the one you can live with. I typed, "Don't do it alone. Come early Thursday. 1 Sow. Just you." She wrote back, "Okay." I threw up at 2:47 in the morning, which was at least on schedule. Vanessa's filing went through Tuesday at 11:14 a.m. I signed the affidavit of forgery Tuesday at 3:20 p.m. in front of a notary at a UPS store on Milwaukee Avenue, and Priya emailed at 4:02 to confirm receipt and case number. The petition was ready for service. Vanessa asked me when. I said Friday morning. She asked why not sooner. I said because I had one more thing I needed, and she said carefully, "Emily, I want to remind you that nothing you get at a dinner table is admissible for anything. It's not for the case," I said. She didn't ask what it was for. I've always appreciated that. Here's what it was for. 14 months I had been the only person in that family carrying this. 14 months of Rebecca telling the room I was cold, that I was jealous, that poor Danny put up with a lot. 14 months of my husband letting me be the difficult one because the alternative was admitting what he'd signed my name to. I didn't need him to confess. I had the confession in a safe deposit box. I needed him to choose, out loud, in front of his mother. I needed one clean moment where every person at that table watched Daniel Whitaker look at his wife of 11 years and pick his sister, knowing nothing, defending nothing, just picking her, because that's what he'd always done and always would. And on Thursday, at 6:12 in the evening, he handed it to me on a serving platter. Claire came at 1. We sat in my car in my own driveway, which is a strange place to have the worst conversation of your life, and I told her everything. Not the version where I'm the hero, the whole thing. Including the 14 months I said nothing. She cried. Then she got very quiet, which is worse. Then she said, "Was I stupid?" "No," I said. "You were married." She wanted to know if I'd known it was Marcus the whole time. I said no. That I'd known there was a second person for a year, and I'd only known it was him for 9 weeks. She asked why I didn't tell her in September. I didn't have a good answer then. I still don't, entirely. I said the truest thing I had, which was that I'd been trying to protect her and I'd done it wrong, and that she was allowed to be angry at me about it for as long as she needed. She held my hand across the console for a while. Then she said, "He's not coming tonight. He said there's an issue at the Oak Creek site." We looked at each other. Neither of us said anything, because there wasn't anything left to say. There were 9 of us at dinner. Daniel and me, his parents, Gail and Warren. Rebecca Rebecca and Nathan, Claire, and 2 kids, Nora and Rebecca and Nathan's son Theo, who was 9, both of whom I'd set up in the den with plates and a movie at 5:30 because I have never in my life wanted children in a room less than I wanted them in that one. Marcus's chair sat empty the whole meal. Rebecca made a point of saying it was a shame. She said it twice. She started in on me around 6. It was about the seating first, then about the turkey, then it stopped being about anything at all and became what it had always been going to be. Rebecca crying gently into a napkin about how hard the last year had been, how much Nathan had checked out, how some people in this family had made it worse. Nathan didn't look up. He'd been not looking up for months. I understand that now. Some women just can't stand watching other people be happy, she said, reaching for the gravy. Then, it's okay. Not everybody gets a real life. Emily has her little spreadsheets. Daniel laughed. And I sat there and I felt the last piece of 11 years go out of me like heat off a windshield. Rebecca sniffed. It's fine, Danny. She's always been jealous of me. That's when his palm came down and the glasses jumped. Apologize to my sister. Or get out of my house. Apologize, I said. Or leave. Yes, Gail said. Daniel, very softly. And that was the entire defense mounted on my behalf by his family. Emily, he used that slow, tired voice he saved for when he'd decided I was being difficult. Say sorry, or go pack a bag. Claire whispered, don't. I pushed my chair back. Every single person at that table assumed I was leaving. My mother-in-law actually reached over to take my plate, but I didn't walk toward the door. I walked around the table. Nathan looked up. Warren set down his fork. Rebecca turned in her seat and lifted her chin so everyone could get a good view of her big moment. Well, she said. Go on? Daniel's shoulders dropped. Relief. He honestly believed he had won. I stopped beside her chair, close enough to smell that perfume she mentioned the price of every single time. I leaned down so she had to look up at me. I'm sorry, Rebecca. She smiled. Wide and satisfied and ugly. That's all I wanted, she said. I'm sorry I kept your affair a secret for 14 months. And before one person at that table could take a breath, I'm sorry every single one of you is about to find out whose husband he is. I have replayed the next 40 seconds more times than I'd like to admit, and what stays with me isn't Rebecca. It's Daniel. Because Rebecca's face did what I expected. The mask came off in stages, like a curtain dropping in 3 separate falls. Confusion, then calculation. Then, finally, the flat animal blankness of a person who has just understood that there is no version of the next hour that she survives. But Daniel didn't look shocked. Daniel looked caught, and every single person at that table saw it. His mother saw it. That's what ended it, honestly, not anything I said. Gail Whitaker looked at her son's face and understood that her daughter-in-law had just said something factual. Nathan set his napkin on the table, very carefully, the way he does everything. 14 months, he said, to no one. Nathan, Rebecca started. The Thursdays. He wasn't asking. You told me it was the Rockford install. Warren said, now let's all just, and then Claire spoke, and her voice was so steady it frightened me. Where's the hotel? I said. Oak Creek. Claire took her phone out of her cardigan pocket. We'd shared locations for 4 years. All of us. Me, her, Marcus, set up during a snowstorm in 2021 and never turned off, the way nobody ever turns those off. She held the screen up so the table could see it. A small silver dot, sitting on a frontage road off I-94, 91 minutes north. Rebecca said, that doesn't mean anything. Nobody answered her. Nathan stood up, put on his coat, went into the den, came out holding Theo's hand and Theo's coat, and said, say thank you to Aunt Emily. Theo said thank you to Aunt Emily, and they left. Rebecca left 20 minutes later, still talking. Gail and Warren left 10 minutes after that, and Gail hugged me at the door and didn't say anything, and I don't know to this day what that hug was. Daniel stayed. He wanted to talk. He wanted specifically to explain about the hotel. He'd worked up a whole thing on the fly, the way salespeople do, about how he was in an impossible position, and he'd been trying to protect everyone. I let him get about 90 seconds into it. Then I said, March 3rd. He stopped. March 3rd of last year. $75,000 line on this house. 41.5 drawn. 19 transfers to your sister. $34,200. I kept my voice level because I was, at the end of the day, giving a findings summary, and I've given 400 of those. The signature on the rider isn't mine. There's a 9-page examiner's report that says so. The credit union has my affidavit and a case number, and your petition gets served tomorrow morning at your office. He sat down on the arm of the couch. Emily, you let me think you were cheating, I said, for over a year. You watched me think it. He said, I was going to fix it. That's the last real sentence my husband ever said to me. I was going to fix it. Present tense of a verb he never once conjugated. I slept at Claire's that night. We put Nora to bed and then sat on her kitchen floor with our backs against the dishwasher and ate cold stuffing out of the container with 2 forks. And at some point around 1 in the morning, she started laughing and couldn't stop. And then neither could I. And it was the worst and best sound in the world. Here's what actually happened afterward, because I know that's what people want. It's less cinematic than you'd think. Real consequences arrive by mail. Nathan filed 9 days later. His attorney and Vanessa ended up on the same conference call at one point, over the hotel folios, which Nathan's side subpoenaed independently. He got the house. He has Theo most of the time. He sent me a card in February, a real card, in an envelope, with a stamp, and all it said was, thank you for telling the truth in front of my son's grandparents. It saved me a year. I have it in a drawer. Marcus moved out of Claire's in December. He tried, for about 6 weeks, the thing men try, which is to make it a story about how unhappy he'd been. Claire went to Dana Whitcomb too. Eventually, I gave her the number, and she came out of it steadier than I I did. They're divorced now. He has Nora every other weekend and 2 weeks in summer, and Claire has never once said a bad word about him in front of that little girl, which I think is the single most impressive thing anyone in this story did. Rebecca lost the Oak Creek account first, then the Wisconsin territory, then the job. Not because anyone reported her, nobody did, but because the affair had been running through job sites for 2 years, and once Nathan's discovery started pulling records, people at both companies started comparing notes. She moved into Gail and Warren's finished basement in March. Gail told me that on the phone, unprompted, in a tone I couldn't read. I don't feel good about it. I want to, and I don't. She's 46 and she lives in her parents' basement, and she used to be the most confident person I'd ever met. Daniel was the slowest. Civil first. Vanessa's dissipation claim held, and the marital estate was divided with the $41,500 charged against his share, plus $34,200 in unreimbursed transfers, plus fees. The house sold in June. My half was smaller than it should have been and larger than I expected. The criminal side took until spring. Renata Salcedo, assistant state's attorney, 11 years in the financial crimes unit, called me in April to tell me they were accepting the referral and to warn me, carefully, kindly, that these cases rarely end in a courtroom. She was right. Daniel pled to a single count of forgery, class 4, and got probation, restitution, and a felony conviction that follows him through every background check a sales job in a hospital system requires. He lost the job in July, not because of the plea, because his employer's compliance policy required self-disclosure within 10 days, and he didn't disclose. He is still, as far as I know, telling people it was a misunderstanding about a home equity line. The notary lost his commission and paid a fine of $2,500. 11 months later, on a Saturday in October, Claire and I took Nora to a pumpkin patch in Hebron and stood in a gravel lot drinking bad cider while a 6-year-old evaluated 200 pumpkins with total seriousness. Claire said, "Do you ever wish you'd just said it in September? That first September? I've thought about it 1,000 times." I gave her the honest answer. Yeah, I do. Because that's the part nobody puts in these stories. I was right about everything, and I still waited 14 months, and my sister spent a year of her life inside a lie I could have ended in an afternoon. Being right and being good are not the same skill, and I have always been better at one of them. "You didn't know it was him," she said. "I knew it was somebody's husband." She bumped my shoulder with hers. Stop. I have a condo now, 2 bedrooms, one of which is an office with a standing desk and a whiteboard nobody makes fun of. I made director in August. I closed the safe deposit box in September and shredded the paper copies at a community event in a grocery store parking lot, and I stood there and watched the truck do it, which was not as satisfying as I'd hoped and not as sad as I'd feared. I still wake up at 2:47 sometimes, less than I did. Rebecca called me once last spring. I didn't answer and she didn't leave a message, and I've decided that's the shape that relationship gets to keep. I think about the moment before it, more than the moment itself. That half second at the table where Daniel looked at me and had one job, to say my wife is not the problem, and instead said yes. Everybody at that table thought I was the one being asked to apologize. Rebecca was right about one thing though. I do have my little spreadsheets, and in 14 months of that family, they were the only thing that never lied to me.